The air in the conference room was sharp with anticipation and the faint sting of lemon-scented polish. I sat at the long obsidian table, notepad, open pen, poised more out of habit than need. I'd already prepared the financials, refined the deck, rehearsed my pitch backwards and forwards. My team, our team, knew I was the one who held this place together. The numbers said it. The clients said it. The hours I worked screamed it. I glanced across the room at Evan Rhodes, who was scrolling on his phone, feet half tucked under his chair, like a bored intern. I caught a glimpse of his screen sports scores. Dorian Kessler entered like always smoothed hair, pinstripe suit cufflinks, so polished they nearly blinded me under the LED lights. His presence quieted the room. For once, even Evan put his phone down. Team. Dorian began, his voice clipped and clear. It's been a strong quarter, and we're moving into our next phase of leadership with confidence. My pulse picked up. I sat a little straighter. This was it. As of today, he continued, our new team lead for strategic initiatives will be Evan Rhodes. Silence dropped like a stone. I didn't move. I couldn't. Evan blinked, then grinned, clearly surprised himself. Oh, wow. Thanks, Dorian, he said with that lazy charm of his, like he'd just been handed a gift bag. I opened my mouth, but Dorian raised a hand, already pivoting. You're brilliant, Noelia, he said, glancing my way with a diplomatic smile. But this team needs a certain presence. Someone clients feel commands the room. Your support. The word hit harder than I expected. Support. Not leadership, not vision, not direction. Just the pillar no one thanks until it crumbles. Around me, people shifted uncomfortably. One coughed. Someone flipped their notebook closed. I saw the slide deck I'd built, sleek, clean, airtight, sitting unread on the table, like a blueprint for a house no one would enter. I nodded too slowly. My hands felt stiff as I collected my materials and tucked them back into my bag. Evan slapped me on the back as we filed out. Don't worry, I'll still need you to keep my stuff straight, he joked, as if this were some friendly game we were both in on. I didn't answer. I just smiled once, flat and quiet, and walked out. I didn't confront Dorian. I didn't ask for clarity or fairness or rationale. That would have given them the satisfaction of believing I was still waiting for permission. Instead, I did what I'd always done, solved the mess. Within days of taking over, Evan missed the weekly operations call with the Denmark client. I stepped in without a word, smoothed it over, and sent him a follow-up summary he never replied to. A week later, he sent out a flawed proposal with duplicate data and forgot to include pricing models for Q2. I fixed it overnight, flagged the error discreetly, and watched him present it the next morning as if nothing had happened. It was astonishing how little he understood the language of strategy, but he was fluent in something else, optics. He knew how to lean back in a chair just enough to seem confident, how to pause dramatically in meetings, how to say, "That's a great question," even when the question shattered his entire logic. Dorian ate it up. I watched. I documented. I started logging patterns, not to weaponize, but to preserve. One evening after everyone had left, I sat in the conference room alone with my laptop. I opened a new folder, named it Portfolio 0.1. Inside, I began building what I'd spent the last 7 years crafting for others. Client journey matrices, product rollout frameworks, internal diagnostics with heat mapping logic no one else had dared formalize, case study drafts with anonymized detail. It was the architecture behind every win I'd silently powered. I stripped names, rewrote intros, replaced slides, but the spine was mine. My approach, my logic, my voice. No title, no audience, just pure clarity. Each night I added more, one tool, one story, one breakthrough at a time. The files multiplied like roots beneath pavement. They don't hear me, I thought, but they'll feel my thinking. I pressed save and closed the lid. And when Evan stumbled again in front of the Cordova investors 2 weeks later, forgetting half the acquisition outline, it took me less than 20 minutes to repair the entire briefing and less than 2 to realize I was done building things for people who'd never know where the foundation came from. The Mendoza pitch was a disaster before it even began. Evan decided to go off script, which in his world meant rambling for 10 minutes about synergy and momentum and other vague, caffeinated nonsense. He didn't address the client's acquisition risks, skipped their historical pain points, and forgot the competitive analysis slide entirely. I watched from the side of the room, pulse flat. It wasn't the kind of failure that would explode immediately. It was slower, more corrosive. A quiet erosion of trust. By the time the meeting ended, the client's smiles were thin, and their follow-up questions were clipped. Evan looked puzzled, like the applause had come too soft. Dorian shrugged it off, but I knew the clock had started ticking. That night I stayed at the office long after the cleaning staff had finished. I rebuilt the deck, clarified the strategy threads, added market intelligence, and refocused the implementation roadmap. I drafted a revised summary proposal and sent it under Evan's name again. The client signed the next morning. Dorian congratulated him. In the break room, clapped his shoulder and said something about executive instinct. I passed them both without stopping, coffee in hand, a thin folder pressed under my arm. Back at my desk, I pulled up my browser and opened the shell site I'd registered months ago but hadn't touched. Strategy is structure. Come, I typed the headline without thinking. How vague leadership fails. High stakes pitches a case. Deconstructed. I broke down the Mendoza deck, anonymized, scrubbed, made clean. I laid out what went wrong and how it could have cost millions. Then I mapped the recovery point by point, how realignment of the story, arc value, anchors, and client risk mitigation saved it. I didn't mention Evan. I didn't need to. By midnight, I hit publish. It didn't explode, but it didn't sit silent either. Over the next few days, I noticed traffic, shares, comments from other consultants, small firm strategists, MBA students tagging each other. One comment stuck with me. I've been trying to say this for years. Whoever wrote this finally did. That night I posted again, and this time I didn't wait for someone to mess up before writing what I already knew. The night the blog post passed 2,000 hits, I lay on my couch, with my laptop open, staring at the analytics, like they belonged to someone else. It was working quietly, steadily, but I felt something I didn't expect: guilt. Like I was sneaking out of a room I was supposed to endure instead of escape. That guilt had a name: Inez Calderon. She'd been my professor during grad school. Tall, sharp-eyed, soft-spoken in a way that made people lean in. I remember once she stayed after class when she noticed I was hesitant about a case critique. "You hesitate when you speak," she told me, "but not when you write." Why I didn't answer. She smiled. "Don't wait for the world to give you space, Noelia. Cut it. Then speak into it." She taught me how to structure arguments that didn't shout, but left no exit. How to use precision as pressure. She was the one who showed me that strategy wasn't just logic, it was choreography. She didn't make tenure. Too quiet, they said. Not enough board visibility. One publication short. A junior hire with flashier credentials took her place. She died 3 months later from ovarian cancer. Only a few of us attended the funeral. Her voice sharp as it was faded behind institutional doors. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, thinking about how easy it was to disappear even after building brilliance, brick by brick. Inez had played by the rules until they buried her under them. The next day, after everyone left the office, I stayed back and opened the voice recorder on my phone. I stared at the red dot for a full minute before hitting record. "My name is Noelia Armand," I said. I just watched a client shake hands with the wrong person again, and I said nothing. But I know exactly how we saved that pitch. I know who built it. Every night after that, I recorded something. Not for posting, not for proof. Just to hear myself claim the space. Somewhere between the 4th and 5th entry, I started walking home a little slower, holding my head a little higher. It happened on a Tuesday in the most ordinary way possible. Someone forwarded me a link during lunch. An industry webinar titled Strategic Misfires and Silent Turnarounds. At the 38-minute mark, a panelist brought up a blog post. Mine. There's this breakdown floating around, she said, her tone curious. On pitch recovery logic. It's anonymous, but razor sharp. Whoever wrote it, they've been in the room. I watched the clip twice, then again. No name, no attribution, but my framework, my recovery sequence. The entire Mendoza structure mirrored back through someone else's praise. It should have thrilled me. Instead, it made my ribs tighten. At the end of the day, I was gathering my things when Evan swaggered past my desk phone in hand. Hey, he said, you see that webinar Wild Right? That pitch rescue sounded a lot like our Cordova week. Must be some fan out there taking notes. He grinned like someone who'd just been compared to a celebrity. I stared at him. Behind him, Dorian appeared, loosening his tie. I saw that too. Maybe we're setting trends, he said casually. Keep doing what you're doing, Evan. They moved on, just like that. I sat there jaw tight, letting the anger settle into something colder. I didn't say a word. I opened my laptop and worked another hour, not on company work, on mine. That night, when I finally got home and tossed my shoes off near the door, I checked my email before bed. Subject line, thank you. The message was short. I read your work. I'm still here. Someday I'll leave too. Thank you. F. No signature, no context, just initials. Someone was watching. Someone who knew. I stared at the screen, heart slow and steady, not flattered, not scared, just aware. There were others in the silence. I wasn't alone in the margins anymore. I clicked reply. Didn't send one. Instead, I opened a blank post and started typing. Another framework, another scenario they'd never give me credit for. But they'd feel it all the same. The email sat in my inbox for 2 days before I opened it properly. Subject Keynote Invitation. Women in Strategy Forum 2025. They wanted me, not the blog. Real name, real face. Full credentials. 30 minutes to speak on clarity in executive communication. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Then I saw the signature, a managing partner from a boutique firm in Seattle who had reposted one of my frameworks weeks earlier. She knew, or at least she suspected. I paced my apartment that night, the city buzzing quietly through the windows. If I did this, the line between anonymous authority and corporate employee would disappear. If Dorian saw it, and he'd know. I had always been careful. But careful wasn't working anymore. I clicked accept. The keynote was held in a sunlit conference center with rows of white chairs and a floral stage design that made everything look softer than it was. I wore a navy blazer and flats that didn't hurt. When I stepped up to the podium, I looked into the crowd and saw something I didn't expect people leaning forward. I didn't tell them about Evan or Dorian or being called support. I told them about misalignment, about how strategy dies when it's shaped by fear. I spoke without slides, just notes, my voice, and they listened. The clip made its rounds online before I even got back to Austin. Someone posted a side-by-side screenshot, my face, my voice, and the blog name linked in the caption. The mask was gone. 2 days later, Dorian called me into his office. He closed the door, straightened his cuffs. That was quite a talk, he said. I waited. You're getting louder than your role allows, he added softer. People are asking if you're planning to leave. I didn't answer. I only smiled, thanked him for his time, and walked out. Back at my desk, my phone buzzed with a new email. The subject line was even shorter than the last offer. The subject line was clear, direct offer. Byron Strat Partners. Inside, a 2-paragraph email. They didn't dance around it. They'd followed my blog. They'd seen the keynote. They were impressed. We believe you're shaping the way strategy is being communicated, it read. We'd like to give you the tools to do it at scale. Attached was a formal offer, Director of Strategic Transformation, full autonomy, a team of 6, double my current salary. I closed the laptop and stared at my reflection in the dark window. It was everything I'd worked toward. Authority, freedom, acknowledgement without translation. No more tiptoeing around titles, no more correcting slides behind someone else's curtain. Just space, cut clean. And yet, I hesitated. Byron Strat wasn't the enemy, but they weren't the battlefield I'd spent years quietly reshaping. Walking away from Dorian and Evan felt less like escape and more like an unfinished page. There was something about leaving without a final proof that bothered me, like pulling the needle before the last thread was secure. Still, the emails kept coming. Some were short. You made me believe I can do this too. Others felt heavier. If you leave, others will see it can be done. That one stayed with me. I read it twice. Then again. It wasn't about staying or going. It was about choosing what kind of story I wanted to leave behind. The next morning, I arrived early and sat in the lobby watching Dorian walk past in a tailored coat, coffee in hand, nodding to someone from legal like nothing had shifted, like nothing ever would. But everything had. I'd made sure of it. I pulled out my phone and typed a reply to Byron Strat. I didn't accept. Not yet. But I didn't decline either. Instead, I asked for a meeting. In person. Week's end. I wanted them to see exactly who they were talking to. That afternoon, our biggest client called the office and made a request no one saw coming. The invitation came in the form of a sudden calendar update strategic vision showcase, 11:00 a.m. Main ballroom. No context, just my name on the presenter list. I walked straight to Dorian's office. They're asking for you, he said, eyes on his monitor. Catalyst Group. Their executive team specifically requested you present the new initiative. I didn't ask why. I already knew. The Catalyst account had been the most complex of the year acquisition merger, legacy conflict, regulatory risk. Evan had touched it briefly before I took it over completely, and they'd felt the difference. I'll need the full deck, I said. You wrote it, he said, glancing up. You probably already have it memorized. He was right. I had. By the time I stepped onto the ballroom stage, the room was full. The floor was sleek with polished branding. Evan sat 3 rows back, expression flat. Dorian hovered near the side wall, arms crossed, watching. I started slow, methodical, mapping the pain points, then guiding them into the rebuild. I moved through the charts, but I kept the tone human. Clients weren't just numbers. They were consequences, and we had a responsibility to be precise. The last slide loaded behind me. I paused. Let the silence settle. I've been fortunate to work with a team willing to evolve, I said. But clarity didn't come from title or tradition. It came from structure. And the truth is, much of this framework came from a voice that didn't have a name for a while. I clicked to reveal the final title, strategyisstructure.com underneath it, authored by Noelia Armand. The room shifted, a few murmurs, one audible exhale. Dorian's head tilted. Evan's jaw moved like he wanted to swallow something but couldn't. I didn't smile. I didn't bow. I closed the laptop, nodded once to the client leads, and walked off the stage as the applause broke. Not thunderous, but sharp, clean, real. Later that afternoon, Dorian asked to see me privately. Dorian didn't look at me right away when I stepped into his office. He stood near the window, hands clasped behind his back, the skyline bending faintly in the reflection. He turned slowly like someone bracing for a mirror. I was wrong, he said quietly. I always knew you were brilliant. I just thought, he let it hang. I let it sit. That a woman like me couldn't command respect unless I was behind a curtain I finished. He blinked. I thought you'd get crushed. That if I gave you the spotlight, they'd tear you apart. No, I said. You thought they wouldn't listen. And instead of changing that, you handed them someone easier to hear. He nodded but didn't defend himself. Then he said it. I want you to take Evan's position. He said it plainly, like an offering. As if the thing I'd been denied once repackaged might still mean the same. I sat down across from him calm. That seat was built to silence people like me, I said. It was shaped by assumptions held up by convenience and protected by loyalty that had nothing to do with performance. I paused, not to be dramatic, but to breathe. I don't want it, I added. I'm redesigning the table. He looked down, then back up. You'll build it somewhere else I already have. I stood. To his credit, he didn't argue. He only nodded slowly. If you ever want to return on your terms, I'll clear the space. But space was never the problem. Ownership was. I walked to the door. His voice followed, quiet but firm. You were the structure all along. I just didn't recognize the architecture. I didn't turn around. I only said, that's the difference. I build for visibility now. And then I left, walking through a hallway of glass that never quite reflected me until I stopped waiting for it to. The following morning, I arrived early to Armand & Co., with keys in my hand and Farah's resume waiting in my inbox. 1 year later, the glass on my office door reads, Armand & Co. Maristan, Strategic Clarity Redefined. We're not the biggest firm, not yet, but we don't need to be. Our client list includes 4 Fortune 100's 11 fast-growth startups and a nonprofit collective. I insisted we take on pro bono. We have no ad campaign, no PR team, just results and referrals. Every Monday morning, I start our team meetings the same way. You're not here to echo, I say. You're here to design. The table in the conference room is round. Everyone sits at it, analysts, associates, directors. We don't reward volume. We reward precision, thoughtfulness, the long game. I've hired carefully, not just for pedigree, but for grit. People who've been underestimated tend to think further ahead. They build stronger frameworks because they know they won't get a second chance to explain them. One afternoon, between a call with Tokyo and a whiteboard session for a client in biotech, I check my inbox. There's a new message subject line. Simple application, F. I open it slowly, already knowing who it is. It starts, Hi Noelia. We've never met officially, but I sent you a note last year, just one line late at night. It's taken me a while to believe I could follow it. But I'm ready now. Farah Winton attached is a portfolio of client briefs, competitive audits, and redesigns that glow with clear thinking. She doesn't oversell herself. She doesn't have to. I see the shape of someone who spent years building in silence. I reply with a calendar link for the interview. No extra questions. Later that evening, I pour tea and glance again at her email. The courage it took, the timing, the shift. And I realize something. The loudest rooms aren't the ones with the highest ceilings. They're the ones where every voice holds weight. I smile and type 2 words, welcome aboard. Then I whisper the words I say before every project kickoff, even when I'm alone in the room. Welcome to the loud table.